Welcome to Solo Progression, the series where I play through Dungeon Defenders 1 Redux with the goal of beating the crystalline dimension on the hardest difficulty, as well as completing all the achievements. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Solo Progression. In this episode, we'll be taking on the Lost Eternia Shards maps. First up, we're going to go back to Mistymire Forest after we've gotten a few mythical gear upgrades. So on the first step, we were overrun due to getting killed by the spider boss at the end, so I also make sure to shore up my defenses just a little bit, and this is done by adding tower buff beams to each lane. Pretty much from here on out, on every map, I'm going to be using tower buff beams. They're just so useful to have. If you don't have them, you're just losing out on so much extra damage you could be having, rather than just placing one of these over another tower. I also space out some of my auras and defenses instead of putting in the spots I put last time. This time I push up one of the north lanes up a bit more. This way it can cover more of the spider spawns, but also not having to worry about spiders spawning on top of them and shooting webs and slowing them down. To combat the spiders, I've also placed down more lightning auras kind of just around, just so it eats them up and basically kills them before they can actually do any true damage to my towers. As well as placing down archers kind of near all the spider spawn points so that they take the aggro over the lane towers, and they'll also be able to shoot down the spiders as well. I do want to make sure I have an aura stack that has basically all the normal electric and snare, strength drain, and healing auras, just for the Spider Queen boss in particular. I also want to make sure that I have some defenses for the Spider Queen boss. I believe the Magic Missile Tower is going to play a vital role into taking down the boss, as it has very fast attack speed and will be very useful for when the Spider Queen exposes her Crystal Shard, and it can do a ton of damage if it's actually aiming at that. But yep, we don't really have any troubles going through Mistymire Forest. Like again, we had a pretty easy time getting to the boss. Now the issue is dealing with the boss. So we will get to the boss and make sure we are able to take care of it. I've increased my monk's resistance a little bit, and I think I have the dragon on. I'm not too sure. But this fight ends up going a lot smoother. It does take quite a while, but having the Magic Missile Tower attacking from the buff beam added a good amount of damage to the fight, especially when the Spider Queen exposed her shard while she was looking towards it. I sort of tried to make sure I was positioning myself between the spider and the Magic Missile Tower so that she would look at me, and then when all the spiders would die, I would be able to not only do damage myself, but also have my Magic Missile Tower and the archers I placed on the buff beam to just do extra damage to her during that time. You can really see the effect of how much the aura stack plus the healing aura is just pretty much saving my life. I'm taking like nearly no damage. I'm healing it all back up if I do take damage. All my lanes are pretty well defended. The spiders are getting killed that are falling out of her and falling down from the map pretty much instantly, so it makes it so she exposes her chest as soon as she's exposing her chest. That doesn't sound kind of weird. But as soon as she exposes her shard, when we destroy all these spiders that she spawns, and none of our towers have any issues dealing with any of the ogres or whatever mobs spawn in that lane due to the spiders not being able to attack them in the first place, unless the Spider Queen goes after them specifically. But having the hero boost plus tower boost just to do a bit of extra damage, and it kind of heals up our defenses as we're fighting, makes this fight much easier than the first one. We do end up beating it, and we actually get a few pieces of gear that are useful for my Series ED, I believe, and my monk. Oh, I'm sorry, not my monk, my apprentice. My apprentice gets a new weapon that gives him very good tower stats, and we'll put that on him. But that will wrap up Mistymire Forest. We'll probably do this again at some point on Insane Survival. But for now, we're going to keep going on and go to the next map, which is the Moraggo Desert Town. Personally, I love the design of this map. I think it just looks really nice. I've kind of always liked desert levels in most games that I've played, but this one just has that appeal to me. The thing with the choke points on this map and the crystals is that some of the crystals kind of just aren't used. Like there's one in like the back right for some reason. Or I should say, I think it's the south right, or southeast, I should say. But like, there's nothing that really attacks that. Maybe it does on Nightmare, but I kind of forget. I think the only reason why it's truly there is that at some point there are assault missions where you're like basically you're a mob attacking the enemies, but you play as your hero. I believe the crystal is there just so you have another objective to complete while you're doing these maps on. I believe they're called Return to the levels here, like so Return to Moraggo Desert Town. Anyways, there's 5 choke points, which is pretty standard now for the Lost Shards maps. We'll see that on 3 of the 4 maps, I believe. And this map adds a new mob, the Djinns. The Djinns are basically like the giant genies. You'll see them throughout the video. Djinns can attack with ranged projectiles. They can buff enemy mobs. It'll make them basically this goldish color. It increases their stats, their health, their damage, basically all their stats across the board. And notice the only thing they can do is that they can destroy any defense, including auras and traps. Basically, they channel like this beam, I guess, towards one of your auras, traps, any of your towers, and if it channels it long enough, it instantly destroys it, which is super annoying because eventually they'll have so much health on the harder difficulties that your defenses won't kill them in time, and they'll destroy one of your towers and basically just kill you right there because you won't be able to get another EV beam up in time or just that other tower up in time. So they're very annoying, but they aren't too bad on insane mode. Either you or your defenses need to be able to deal with the Jins pretty fast. Otherwise, you have to be very careful of them sitting out of the range of your towers and destroying your auras and buff beams, which will basically cause this cascading effect of you losing the map. I do believe I have a little bit of a hiccup at the start here. I actually managed to have Wyverns come through because I wasn't protecting them from one of the sides. But these Lost Shards maps give you so much more DU and MU that you can kind of just place as many towers as you want and many buff beams as you want. You don't need to use all the DU, which is super handy because you can save some of that DU for the boss waves, which makes actually survival on these maps a little bit easier because you get so much extra DU, which is intended to kind of use for the boss, but then you can just use those during the round on survival and not worry about the boss. Anyways, we're coming up on the boss here, and boy, was this one a doozy. So the boss on the Moraggo Desert Town is the King of the Genies. This boss fight is particularly annoying for me. You have to basically activate these genie lamps that he's hiding in. You rub them, I believe. And that will summon the boss to basically where that lamp is located at. These lamps have a noise and emit a purple dust, so it's kind of easy to find them. I noticed when I was playing on... I had all the characters out for this one, so I wanted weapons on everyone. The noise it was making was kind of disorienting because it wasn't exactly where it was saying it was, because it's like listening to it on another character while I was playing as one of the other characters, and it basically kind of just threw me off my game. So I was like watching and walking around for every lamp pretty much until I found it. So that's one of the annoying things that happens in this fight. But the other annoying thing is that Leon died basically at the start of the fight in such a kill, but Silas and Death both were in such a position that they didn't die. So instead of restarting a level like any sane person, I decided, hey, my defenses are doing pretty good. You know what I should do? I should fight this boss with Silas and Deft, my Series V and Apprentice Tower heroes. So originally my plan was hopefully to spawn the boss in the location where I placed a bunch of Deadly Striker towers and then move them if I needed to, but basically I would just summon them there, or get a summon there because I believe this first summon is always in the same spot, play as Leon, boost those, just get a ton of damage on the first phase, and then just slowly move him back over to that spot. But Leon died right at the start of the fight, so this fight went awful. And another thing that happened is that the Deadly Striker towers weren't even attacking the boss, so I had them located looking in the wrong direction. So I had to sell those, or I think they got destroyed, some of them. But I basically sold those, sold the buff beam, and then replaced them with other buff beams and Deadly Striker towers. It's really nice that I had my Series EV and my Apprentice, because I was able to put down more Deadly Strike towers, plus tower buff beams out of range, and those things can attack through walls. So basically wherever the king would spawn, I put down a Deadly Striker tower, a buff beam, and then aim it right at the boss. And eventually, we whittled down his health so it went back into the lamp. Now the issue is some of the areas that the lamp will go. So basically after each phase, I had to destroy my Deadly Striker towers and my buff beam towers and replace them wherever the new boss spawned. Sometimes I got lucky where it would spawn in the same area like twice, 3 times in a row, which really helped make this fight a little bit faster. So this fight takes, I think, almost like 12, 13 minutes because I don't have a DPS character actually doing damage to this, which was very painful. And this footage in the background is sped up 4 times, and I have here that's... Yeah, I have about 4 minutes and 21 seconds of this boss fight in 4 times speed. So that's about 16 minutes just spent on this boss fight, which is absurd. So next time this happens, I will not just be using defenses to kill the boss, and hopefully have enough resistances on Leon to be able to tank the boss and not have to worry about him dying right away. I think a part of the issue too is I didn't have a Strength Drain aura right where the boss spawned and basically got one shot, which is what happens when you have a Strength Drain aura plus resistances. The Strength Drain auras are super impactful for these boss fights that you want to make sure you use them. I honestly think that if I redid the map from the second Leon died to now, it probably would have been faster to do it that way, because the waves just take so long, or I should say the phases take so long on the genie. But eventually, we do end up taking down the King of the Genies, as he's so called. Definitely not a fun fight, but I know the other fights in the Lost Shards DLC are much worse in my opinion, especially the next map we'll be doing in the next episode. But ended up getting some good weapons from this. I believe we got the weapon for the monk that actually was incredible for the range damage. So we end up putting that on and upgrading the range damage a ton. This is incredibly helpful for when we're using the Genie Pet, since we can now sit back and be able to gain mana from our Genie Pet and still be doing decent damage with our Monk with our range damage. This will be really useful for keeping up our boost and being able to just go real close to enemies and just basically like shotgun blast them with our range weapon now. And this should be a lesson for you guys if you ever guys play Dungeons & Dragons. This kind of goes for any of the games you play, but make sure you lock the items you don't want to sell. So I unlock everything and just lock the ones I want to not sell. And then I ended up selling everything and end up selling the genie I just was talking about. So you're now like me. You might be genius, and I don't want to be genius. So we're going back to the Hall of Court to get another genie. Now, one of the things is I am also going to show my setup for Wave 13 so you can see it. But I'm starting on Wave 13. This way, I can actually get my genie a lot faster rather than starting all the way from the start. You'll still be able to get the genie starting on Wave 13 as long as you have all your characters out. But you don't have to go through the arduous process of setting up all your towers throughout the waves, starting on Wave like 4 or 5. But they also give you extra mana at the start of these waves. It's kind of accounting for the wave you started at versus now, so you get all this extra mana, so you're enough mana to get all your defenses down before the waves actually begin. So essentially I just get my tower buffings down, start upgrading those once their waves start, and pretty quickly we finish up this level and get some more genies. We used the trick to get 4 more genies, and the genies we got were okay, but they were all a little bit worse than the ones we had earlier that I accidentally sold. But that's going to basically wrap this video. No stat chat this episode. Most of the stats are pretty much the same. I think just a few weapon upgrades as well and some resistances. But most times I'll only be including stats if there's a major change or if I'm going to be attempting something differently. Like basically once I start Nightmare mode, that's when the stats matter, like pre-Nightmare and after Nightmare. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Our stats on Insane right now are pretty much capped. I wouldn't say they're capped, but it doesn't matter too much until we get to Nightmare mode. But yeah, that's going to finish off this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. And you guys have a nice day and have some happy holidays. See ya.